Well, sometimes I really don't know why I watch these terrible movies, and sometimes I even rewatch them. Like Creepshow 3, the very worst of the franchise and one of the worst movies in general, having basically nothing to do with the original two movies, being made much later than the first two, and without the involvement of George A. Romero or Stephen King, or anyone else who was involved as far as I can see. It's still a horror anthology, even though the true horror comes from the quality of the movie. But there's no creep, most stories don't really feel like Creepshow or an EC comic story. It just feels like shit, so let's dive into it. Creepshow 3 starts with a cartoonish CGI sequence that looks more like the first draft of an animated scene and not the finished product. It shows some guy in a hoodie who kills a dog and makes hot dogs out of it. Not even sure what this was all about, but then we see the title sequence, made of comic panels, and then the first story starts. The remote is about a schoolgirl going to her family, who has a new universal control remote, and using the remote it changes the ethnicity of the family. The actual idea behind the story is that the girl is kind of bitchy and doesn't like her family and neighborhood, but the whole story doesn't make sense. The family is barely introduced and they also hardly characterize the girl. The whole thing becomes even more nonsensical once the girl also turns into a monster with some open horrific wounds, but she seemingly has no pain and eats some chips from a wedding ceremony for her professor neighbor. Eventually she is a disgusting fleshy blob and her family wants to kill her, but then she is turned into a rabbit, I guess because she is called Alice and Alice in Wonderland and the Rabbit? What a terrible start to a terrible movie. I mean, the cartoon prologue already was a bad sign and things won't get any better. The next part is the radio, which is about AJ Bowen who didn't hit his winning streak yet with horror, so it's before his time in The Signal or the Adam Wingard movies he was in. He is a security guard here and buys a radio from a homeless guy, but without the antenna. The cheap bastard. He creates one himself and suddenly hears the radio talk to him. The voice of a woman tells him what to do and he follows her advice. But soon the first problems arise and he starts killing. But once he tries to get together with his neighbor, a pretty blonde with bad luck, things get even worse. The radio tells him to kill her too. But instead of listening one last time to the radio, he breaks it and immediately gets killed himself. It's a dumb story, you can see the twists coming a mile away. It's just bad and you feel bad for Bone, who has shown his talent in other movies. The next one is probably the best story, but so badly executed that it doesn't work that well in the end. Call Girl is about, well, a call girl, but actually she is also a serial killer, killing her customers. She is the call girl killer, even though I think killer call girl would be more fitting, as call girl killer sounds like she is killing call girls, but whatever. Anyways, she has a new customer, a shy man who needs some company, but once things get going she stabs him and leaves him for dead. But the man is not dead, he is actually a vampire and kills the call girl, and puts her to the other victims he has in the house, as he killed an entire family before. When he leaves the house the next morning in the sunlight, no one seems to wonder why he is there. I guess he's a different kind of vampire, as he is not affected by sunlight, but I mean he also looks pretty terrible. But it's at least a simple story that could have been nice. The next story is probably the worst. Two guys are visiting their professor, who is about to marry. The two boys don't believe that the bride is a human though, and think she is a robot instead. Mind you, these are supposed to be very bright young men. I mean, the bride does act a bit weird but nothing too crazy, so this is just odd. So what do you think they do? Of course, they knock her out and chop her body up. To find the off button, this was just aggressively stupid. It's terrible, horrible, like a sociopath that tried to make a horror comedy, but not knowing where to draw the line or what is funny, logic, or a semi-decent story. It's the bloodiest story and the dumbest one, and seeing the other ones, this is really an achievement. Eventually they learn that she just likes older men and professors, and did actually study, or maybe it was all just a lie because she was a mail order bride from Russia. To be honest, I don't care at this point. Fuck this shit. And they just hide the body parts in the house, making it look like a quirky comedy. Seriously, fuck this shit. Fortunately, the movie is almost over now. The last story is called Haunted Dog. No, seriously. And it's about an asshole doctor who is treating everyone like trash, especially his patients, and now he has to take care of them for free, as he has to work for 30 days in a clinic which offers free services. I think this was because of some penalty he had, but he is cartoonishly evil, and when he drops a hot dog, he gives the sullied wiener in a bun to a homeless guy who chokes to death on it, or something. He dies on it anyways. He then mistreats his patients, and eventually dies of a heart attack as he sees the homeless guy's ghost a couple of times, thanking him for the hot dog. Eventually the professor marries his dead chopped off wife, and the movie finally ends with this as an epilogue. This was just terrible. Some stories kind of try, but it's overall too awful. The effects are terrible, the actors are probably the best thing of the movie, but even they are on the same level as soap opera actors or guys from a shitty sitcom. The whole thing looks so cheap and the stories are awful. It's 100 minutes and 5 stories, but a slog to go through. Some stories literally make no sense. There are a lot of stories that are trying hard to be funny, but very often the reaction is just, what's the joke? It's also not scary, of course. It's at times gross, but you don't care about anything that happens. The characters are flat. AJ Bowen is still a professional, but he can save the movie or a segment. Unfortunately, this all is just the worst. This is one of the worst movies ever made and an insult for the first 2 films. It's also made by the same guys who have gotten the Day of the Dead and Creepshow license into their talentless fingers and abused and shit on these movies for what feels like 20 years. Also making the terrible Day of the Dead 2 Contagion. Fortunately, they let Shudder do the Creepshow TV series to somewhat redeem the franchise at least a bit, but they should just give the license to someone else who can do something with it. I think this will be the first review for a movie which gets the lowest rating. This is the last hope of movies. This will get a 1 out of 10. But there are more George A. Romero and Stephen King anthologies, like Two Evil Eyes, which had Romero and Dario Argento team up to work on Edgar Allan Poe stories, or the Tales from the Dark Side movie, which also has a fun story about a hitman fighting a cat. Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, is also considered to be the actual third Creepshow movie, at least by Tom Savini. And yeah, he has a point. But I decided to watch another anthology to wash out the taste of this shit show. Another anthology with a cat. Cat's Eyes. Oh man, I didn't recall how much fun this anthology is. Directed by Louis Teague, who also made The Decent Cujo, also based on a Stephen King novel. And we see that there is a lot of fun and love to detail in the movie right from the start. We see the cat being chased by a Saint Bernard, Cujo look-alike, and is almost run over by a car that is a reference to Christine. We also see some other references later, like James Wood watching Dead Zone and the Pet Cemetery book being shown at one point. And the change in quality was kind of overwhelming, as I watched it right after Creepshow 3. The movie starts with a cat running off and barely escaping from Cujo and Christine, when it suddenly sees Drew Barrymore, who asks for help. But while the cat is distracted, it gets caught. At the same time, James Woods is trying to quit smoking, and is brought to a company called Quitters Inc. by his friend. Once in the building, he is confronted with some rather extreme consequences by an employee of Quitters Inc. If he doesn't stop smoking, they will go after his family, torture them, rape his wife and kill his kid, depending on how many times he starts smoking again. Not believing that this will happen, he gets a demonstration with the cat. A room that is using shocks on whoever is in it is shown to him. And if he smokes again, his wife will get into the room. Of course it all gets too much, and eventually the stress makes him start smoking one more cigarette. But he is being spotted and his wife is being shocked. Seeing that the consequences are real, he stops smoking. A while later, he eats with his friend. His next step is not to gain weight, and soon he sees the consequences of what could happen. Great start to the anthology. It's a fun start, even though there are terrible, horrible things implicated. They don't go too far and stop being fun. James Woods also does a good job. with this, and it's overall just nice. Next, the cat is getting into the shenanigans of a mobster. The mobster has a man being captured and brought into his penthouse. As it turns out, the mobster's wife cheated on him with the man in front of him, and now he wants revenge. He has planned a game. The cheater has to walk around the ledge of the building. If he survives, he gets the money and his wife. If he fails, he will be scratched from the boardwalk. But there are a bunch of issues. Not only is he walking around the damn ledge of a high-rise building, the ledge is also pretty uneven and hard to navigate. There are also the most aggressive pigeons ever who are picking on him, and the mobster and his henchmen are throwing stuff at him from the windows, distracting him and making the whole thing much harder. I've heard people don't like that story, but I think it's pretty cool. It's a really nice idea and kind of horrific. Simple but effective, and the twist in the end is also great. I'm not familiar with the actors, but the mobster, the henchman and the cheetah are all pretty good. Yeah, I like this one as well. Eventually the cat travels by ship and gets to the family he needs to save. Drew Barrymore is immediately in love with the cat and feels that there is something special, while the father is rather indifferent and the mother is outright hostile towards it for no reason. Later she thinks the cat is up to no good, but actually the real monster is in the house. There is a tiny troll, well, maybe more of a gnome or goblin, roaming the house at night, sucking the life energy out of the little girl and planning on killing her. The cat has to save everyone, and hopefully the family will realize where the real danger is coming from. This story is also nice. It has some twists actually, but most of all the effects are really good. They managed to blend the effects into the scenes very well. The goblin is very well put into the scenes, same goes for the cat. The compositing shots are very well made and make me wonder why we don't have these kinds of effects anymore. It's much more seamless than the shitty CGI we get nowadays, and is probably cheaper at this point. And it looks like some real art. Well, at least I enjoyed it a lot. Story-wise, this is probably the least favorite for me, but the effects really make this better. Cat's Eye is really good. It's a fun anthology that isn't that violent. I wouldn't be surprised if it's PG-13, and it's also a great gateway horror film. The effects, the actors, the stories, it's all pretty good, and I'm not just saying this because I watched Creepshow 3 before. Cat's Eye is an underrated horror anthology, and overall it's just pretty nice. I would give Cat's Eye a 7 or 8 out of 10. I'm still a bit in the Halloween mood, so let's just say it's an 8 for now. You have to respect the quality of the film here overall.